where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas business, one interview at a time. This is a crazy week ahead of me here. So we're going to start here with this Friday and then going all the way to next Friday. We're going live almost every single day except for Saturday and Sunday. And even though I will be here at the office, and I'll probably be even testing out some new live streaming software that I've been notified of, just to be able to kind of give the people who've developed it a chance to be able to help them test out. And I need to stop putting my hands on the desk because it shakes the camera and stuff. But anyways, we've got an amazing show for you guys today. I'm really, really excited about this one. This is an individual that I'm a huge fan of. I saw him for the first time at an IADD event when he did a presentation. I can't even remember the name of the presentation, but I do remember one of the concepts he talks about, which was making drilling engineers and engineers in general, engineers again, as opposed to being just paper pushers. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Brandon Foster. Brandon, thank you so much for being here today, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing good. I'm just going to make sure that it did say, at least on LinkedIn, that we went live. It hasn't said it yet. Because you just got to double check that everybody can hear us. So
no doubt.
Before we say anything important, and of course, it's not showing the notification. Well, anyways, if people know, oh, there it is. It is there. We already have 33 people watching. Crazy. And I did hear myself. Okay. Everything is working. This is good. All right. At least, 39, 40 people. All right, guys, as usual, please let us know where you guys are watching from. Hit the little buttons at the bottom right-hand corner down there that's got like, a thumbs up, clapping, heart. You don't have to do the heart, the light bulb, and the stroke the beard look there. Any one of those buttons helps us know that people are actually watching, just because I don't believe any of the numbers on LinkedIn. As well as, let us know where you guys are watching from. We love to be able to get everybody a shout out as they're watching the show. So today we've already got Blaine Como, Jordan Timms is on here, Taifi, Zachary Powers, Kevin Hunt. Thank you guys so much. And Magli Cabrera, make sure I said that one right. Plus a handful of other people who are already watching as it keeps kind of scrolling through. As always, guys, if you guys have any questions, especially today, because I might run out of some. Not likely. But if you guys have any questions, be able to sort of fire them off in the comment section. We'll fire them over to Brandon, and we're going to have a really, really, really fun show today. It's Casual Friday. As you can see, I'm wearing my fishing shirt. Looks like Brad is not wearing a tie. He's at least wearing his company shirt. So thank you guys for joining us, and let's get right into it. Brandon, tell me a little bit about what TD Unlimited is, and how you got this company started.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me on, Dave. Yeah. TD Unlimited. When we started, so I had a 15-year career with K&M Technology, working all over the world doing extended reach wells. And the inspiration came as the shale revolution evolved in the U.S. I could see that there was an opportunity with a lot of the smaller operators making up the majority of the drilling in lower 48 U.S. that there was a need for contract technical support. Whether it be managing the whole drilling operation or focusing in on specific issues. The bigger operators, Chevron, BP, ExxonMobil, they tend to have big technical groups that can work wellbore stability issues or BHA or directional or torque and drag, hole cleaning, whatever. Smaller companies tend to not have those resources. The resources that they do have are usually spread pretty thin because they're managing a lot of rigs with a few people. So that was the inspiration to try to address that market. The other aspect of it is that we wanted to pull completions into the consideration of the overall well construction. So rather than just drillers being drillers and putting a hole in the ground, another arm of our business is completions. And so we've got both drilling engineers and completion engineers that work for us. And the idea is to deliver better wells.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I wanted to be able to make sure that we did just kind of a little bit of your background and what you do so that people can understand what a treat this is to be able to have you on the show. So one of the first things I want to be able to get into in what really kind of drew me to you in the beginning was that presentation you did at the IDD.
That was fun.
Tell me a little bit about your philosophy in drilling engineers and being engineers.
Yeah, it's hard It's a hard pill to swallow, but most
I'm
engineers.
about to say, everybody, welcome to the soapbox, because here it comes.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but in my view, most engineers aren't engineers, particularly drilling engineers. And I don't think that it's that they're incompetent and they don't want to be engineers. We're just kind of a product of the system. And I say that coming from, I started my career with Mobil and then Exxon Mobil, and then I worked for a little operator, Pure Resources, for a few years. A lot of fun at both companies, but the role of a drilling engineer in both of those companies and most companies, it tends to be project management. You're trying to coordinate products to get to location. You're approving AFEs. You're explaining why the last AFE or last well went over AFE. It's just coordinating parts and pieces as opposed to being able to dig in to the science of what's going on downhole. And I guess the call to action in the presentation that you saw was to try to build a better an industry that I want to work in. And the inspiration for this came from listening to Aubrey, the late great Aubrey McClendon. If you ever had a chance to listen to him, one of the co-founders of Chesapeake, I think it was at a Doug conference several years ago in Pennsylvania. I got an opportunity to listen to him speak, but he gave the story of why he created Chesapeake. He wanted there to be a company where a landman mattered. Most of the companies that he'd worked for in his career, the landman was just kind of a necessary evil part of the organization. Well, he created Chesapeake because he wanted the acquisition of land to be the reason for the success of the company. And it was inspiring to listen to him tell that story. And ever since that, it kind of stuck with me. Well, I wanted to create a company and furthermore, an industry where drilling engineers mattered, where a drilling engineer's ability to decipher data, use physics to predict future performance and explain why something worked or didn't work is the reason why we make decisions, rather than making decisions emotionally or based on what worked on the last well, or, quite frankly, the way that we often make decisions, just kind of bootstrap off the cuff in the field decision making. So I want to change the industry, and I want our company to be focused on using science and data to make better decisions.
What do you think is like the most important thing that like management teams, because obviously that it's going to be how executives and managers, directors, whatever the level may be that are over the drilling engineers, what can they do to be able to help facilitate that to where, less of the drilling engineer's job is doing paperwork, or in that for that matter, the company man is not just being a glorified secretary out at the rig site, to where they can really concentrate on being able to use their expertise, their knowledge, their education, their background, whatever it may be, to actually, drill better wells?
Well, I think we have an opportunity right now. This is a great opportunity during the downturn to rethink and retool how an organization's structured. And I guess that I would challenge executives to rethink how their drilling department is built, rather than the traditional role of a drilling engineer. If you've got a new young graduate that still has a lot of things to learn, they can be in that role of quote unquote paper pusher, right? And your more senior folks, they need to be given the tools to be able to do technical work. So whether that is software or licenses, training's a big one, because oftentimes, a guy that has 20 years experience hasn't been educated in the right areas to be able to do that sort of technical work. So train him, give him the tools, and then make his task revolve around those technical subjects. And having an in-house expert in wellbore stability or an in-house expert on torque and drag, probably could be the same person. There's, depending on how many wells an operator's drilling, but it will pay dividends. I've seen it time and time again that it's worth the operator's money to have technical experts in the organization, rather than the one engineer trying to juggle 6 rigs and never having any time to be able to dig into those technical details.
Yeah, I know from experience several times that we, companies that I've worked for, where we turn over data to the client, and not just like, hey, here's a data dump, but like, hey, here's some educational content. Here's a PowerPoint presentation that should be able to teach you something. And then, 2 or 3 months later, we go back and we're like, hey, we want to, kind of follow up with you guys, see how the decisions you guys made were. And they're like, oh, why don't you guys come in and, come talk with us about it. And then we start this kind of like back and forth lunch and learn thing, and we start showing the stuff that was in that presentation, and they're like, I've never seen this before. And I'm like, I sent this to you 3 months ago. You paid a lot of money for it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
And then the typical thing is, oh, we've been so busy.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's fun. A great example of that. So I worked with a smaller operator in the Haynesville a few years ago, where they're having all kinds of hole problems. Well, to me, it looked like wellbore instability, but people weren't convinced, meaning the geologist wasn't convinced that it was wellbore instability, which that's a whole side issue. I won't get on that soapbox right now. Anyway, wellbore stability.
It's a long show. Feel free.
Yeah. Nobody really believed that it was wellbore stability. So, you're building geomechanical models and you're trying to explain it with physics, and still there's a lot of skepticism. And then finally, as you're digging through the archives and archives of data that they've got, you find these image logs. And we were just talking about this before the show, that we don't usually run sophisticated LWD. Well, this operator had acquired wells that Shell had drilled. Shell had spent the money on sophisticated LWD image tools where you could see breakout in the wells that they were drilling, where it was undeniable that the sides of the hole were crushed and destroyed, top and bottom of the hole were gauged. Like, that's your smoking gun. And it had been there for 6 years, just sitting around in the archives. Nobody had time to go back and look at what they had done, let alone what the operator before them had done.
It's like buying a car and never looking in the trunk.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe three dead bodies. Three dead bodies in there.
Or 3 treasure chests full of pirate gold. I mean, who knows?
Yep.
I mean, there's at least something worth looking in there for.
No doubt.
All right, guys. For everybody that is watching, we got Eric Allen, Ricardo Borjas, Lee Smith, Brian Dugas, Zachary Powers, Dustin Danshall. Everybody, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. And I should say this. If you guys haven't already, please connect with me and send a LinkedIn connection request to Brandon. Just absolutely blow up his inbox today, so you guys can follow some of the cool stuff that they're doing. They're actually going to be putting on some educational seminars. I'll let you explain that. What is it you guys are going to be doing here pretty soon?
Yeah. Well, again, kind of opportunity presents itself with the COVID crisis and downturn. We're rolling out an online completions training course. It's titled Unconventional Completion Operations. It launches next week. You can find it on our website, or at actually it's totaldepthunlimited.thinkific.com. Thinkific is a cool site that you can bolt on your webpage to do online seminars. But yeah, it's cool. I'm not delivering the course. I've got a guy that works for me, Darren Morgenstern, who he knows completions better than I know drilling, and he's
That's saying something.
He's phenomenal, and he covers all the nuts and bolts of building a completion in an unconventional lateral. And I did the course with him live, and it's really eye opening for completers and for drillers. So yeah, check it out.
It's always good on the drilling side to be able to better understand completions, so that you can see what you do affects and how it affects them in their decision making.
Oh, so, no doubt. I mean, that's why we're here, is to build a hole that you can get oil and gas out of. And the completion is such an integral part. And I think there's also value to be gained. Some of the things that we take for granted on the drilling side that aren't there in the completions world, I think drillers can help influence better completion practices. So yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
All right, guys. So if you guys haven't, be sure to go check that out. So before we get into because I know a lot of people are tuning in for us to be able to debate RSS versus conventional. If there's anybody who's watching right now who, for whatever reason, nothing against you, if you want to be able to debate Brandon, if you comment in the comment section, I will post the link and we will bring you in live. Now, I will say this with a slight caveat. If you work for a company that is publicly traded, it's probably not a good idea to come on the live show. Just going to say, if you haven't gotten it approved, probably not a good idea. If you have a very stringent boss or other people that control marketing it to a certainty, don't jump on the show. But if you do want to jump on, I will post the link in the little description here, and then you guys can jump in here and get into it. So the other thing is tag one of your friends, tag somebody else that might be out there that you think would be able to gain something from this, so that we can bring them into the conversation, or at least just share the post so that we can get a whole bunch of people watching and a whole bunch of people engaged with the conversation. So having said that, which one do you think is better, rotary, steerable, or conventional?
Well, before we get started, first I got to thank Blaine Como. He's the one that put me up to this. Um, and if anyone's interested, Blaine's putting on a really interesting seminar through IADD in 2 weeks. Is it a couple? Yeah, 2 weeks time, I think.
I'm on the IDD board, and I'm not even sure what it is, and I think I'm supposed to be helping promote that. But yes,
hopefully,
it's
Mr.
a good course.
Overkirk
It's a very good course.
Can text us and let us know when that is. But I think
Hopefully Blaine's watching and he'll comment and tell us when it is.
Yeah, which one is better? I put some thought to this, and I feel like that debate is kind of like debating what's better, nails or screws. Okay, so you're try to follow me here on this analogy.
I'm going to nail you down on this one.
Yeah, if you're building something, you could build it with nails or you could build it with screws. Nails have been around since
May 12th, by the way, everybody.
Before Jesus wore short pants. There was an engineer that I worked with years ago at Pure, Mike Metza. That was his famous saying, was before Jesus wore short pants. So a long time ago, we had nails, right? And then somebody in the 1700s figured out how to make mass-produced screws. And much like our rotary steerable providers in the 1700s, there were all sorts of folks running up and down the streets shouting the demise of nails, because now we had this great thing, screws. That, people wouldn't be building things out of nails anymore because we now had screws. But yet here we are in 2020, and we still build stuff out of nails. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, so I'm a den leader for a Cub Scout pack in our hometown, and so I've got 10-year-old boys that we do various activities. One of our units was to build something, so we built these toolboxes. And one of the rules in Boy Scouts BSA is that the Cub Scouts, the younger kids, can't use power tools. So if you're going to make something, it has to be. Yeah, I know, they take all the fun out of it. You want the kids to have all their fingers. So we had to build these toolboxes just with hand tools, handsaw, hammer and nails. And the reason being that, the young kids quite don't have the experience and dexterity yet to use power tools that could hurt somebody. So we built these toolboxes out of nails. It worked fine. The kids had a great time. They learned something. If I was to build that toolbox, I probably wouldn't use nails. I'd probably build it out of screws. But take for granted, I'm 40 plus. Yeah, I've had some experience with power tools. I can run a cordless drill. I would say it's similar with your motor versus RSS situation. The application, what it is that you're trying to build, and the talent of the quote unquote carpenter that's building the thing that you're trying to build. Would you want to put a rotary steerable in the hands of a DD or a directional company that is more like those 10-year-olds, right? And no insult to the DDs out there, but not all of them are going to produce the same results that an expert with an RSS would. So that's one consideration. The application analogy. So we're making these 2 foot by 3 foot wooden toolboxes. They're probably just going to sit, at the foot of the kid's bed. Probably not going to use it for too much. It's not like we're framing a house. So would a screw produce a better quality product at the end of the day? Yeah, but considering what it is that we're trying to build, nail's going to work just fine. The other analogy that I would make, in high school, I worked at a lumber yard, and we had this old man, Saul, who would build these utility sheds in one day. I mean, the guy was amazing. He'd stuff like 10 nails in his mouth, and he'd just bang, 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 bang. He could build a shed in a day where it would take me a week with a screw gun and well-laid plans. I mean, this guy was brilliant. And I would say it's similar in that regard with conventional assemblies. If you've got an awesome DD who understands the field, understands his bit selection, understands stabilizers, understands how to get the most out of the tools, how to make them live, that guy is probably going to run circles around the amateur with the RSS. And I've seen that in unconventional basins in the US. I've also seen it in the high profile offshore world. So in my K&M career drilling ERD wells, I think it was mid 2005-ish, we're drilling an HPHT ERD well, Central North Sea, high spec Maersk jackup rig. We're burning through $250,000 a day. Now, probably just about every ERD project I'd been involved with prior to that, you wouldn't even question. Of course, you're running RSS. RSS, from top to bottom. And here I find myself in the middle of the North Sea on this awesome rig, and we're running a motor and an adjustable gauge stabilizer. And some directional company I hadn't heard of before, Target Directional. But a lot of you guys that have been in the directional just probably know of them. They're a great company. was like, man, what in the world? What are we doing here? Come on, don't they know about RSS? Well, as I spent time during that hitch, I came to find out that they had a couple of the best DDs in the North Sea that had drilled every well on that platform for Phillips back in Phillips's heyday. They knew the formations, they knew what worked, they had had experience with RSS and had seen which zones those tools didn't survive in very well. And we were just absolutely crushing it with a motor and an AGS. And I walked away from that experience thinking, okay, maybe just the default assumption that it's always got to be RSS isn't right. That the application and the people are perhaps more important than the downhole technology.
So do you see that now? Like, obviously we're kind of stepping away from the RSS stuff, but do you see that now where you've got, at least from the operator side, are the drilling engineers asking the proper questions when they make the decision to go RSS? Because obviously there's tons of sales guys out there that are pushing it. Maybe they get better premiums, whatever the thing is. But are the drilling engineers asking the questions and saying, okay, if we go with the RSS, are you bringing out 2 new directional guys that can work well with that RSS and get the most out of it? Are those things that you're teaching to drilling engineers to be able to ask those questions?
You're starting to see a bit more of that. Some operators have taken it upon themselves to hire their own DDs. So rather than using the direction company's DDs, they've got company DDs, sort of renting the tools from somebody, brand X, and then your guys make the decisions. That can work. It doesn't always work. Slight side tangent on that. One of the potential pitfalls of going that route is you can't leave it up to one guy to go hire all those DDs. Let's say you're running 10 rigs and you need a bunch of DDs to run the rigs. You can't put it all on one guy because he'll just go hire his friends, and then you've created this little fiefdom and network of DDs and DD supervisors, and the decision making now all of a sudden starts to fall out of the control of the drilling engineer. So I don't like that model. It's not that I'm against having company DDs. I just think that the line of reporting needs to be back to the drilling engineer, not to some field directional coordinator. I think it's good to have a field coordinator, but that you could just create some organizational headaches if it's not thoughtful. So I do think that the good DDs perhaps more important than which downhole tool you're using. The other, I guess, thing that I would expand on there, thinking about unconventionals, being the large part of the audience here is U.S. land, unconventionals, probably mostly Permian. So my recent experience in Permian, 2 pretty big independent operators in Eastern Delaware. So I say Eastern Delaware because it's different than Western Delaware. It does tend to get easier as you move further west, as you get close to that Central Basin platform. There's a lot of carbonate. The carbonates are hard to map and predict. It's not a layer cake. You're going in and out of really, really soft shales into really, really, really hard limestone. And both of those 2 operators, early on in their experience in that acreage, found that when they would run unconventional, and what that means basically as a starting point was slick assemblies. So big bend slick motors, they'd be out in the lateral, and they're getting pushed around all over the place. They're 20, 25, 30 degree dog legs, left, right, up, down. It was kind of random where it was going. They eventually migrated to RSS with the hope that they'd be able to mitigate some of the deflection, not have such crooked holes, which cause problems later on running casing and doing completions and all the things that come after getting our hole drilled. In slim hole applications, what the experience tended to be with one operator in particular is they had a tremendous amount of problems twisting off RSS. And somebody in our LinkedIn comments had mentioned that when you're debating motor versus RSS, it depends which configuration you're running. So you're running MWD and RSS below motor, or is it just RSS below motor? How is it set up?
I think Brian Dugas made a post about that.
That's who it was.
He put like 10 different ones on there, and I just had to say yes.
Yeah, some that RSS above and below the motor. I haven't seen that. That's an interesting idea. Where I was going with this is they started having a lot of problems twisting off RSS below motor. And spent a lot of time trying to resolve that. And we got to a point where it improved, but it never completely went away. And the things that improved it the most was looking at details. And a lot of this ties back, you've had Fred DePriest on before, the very things that Fred preaches, how you go to bottom, how you come off bottom, running a high weight, not letting weight drill off. Those little details matter. And they extended the life of our RSS tools, but they didn't make the problem completely go away. What eventually made it completely go away was going back to conventional assemblies. But the
That'll
solution,
fix the problem.
yeah, exactly.
Can't twist off an RSS if you don't have it in
all
the
these
hole.
other issues, you can't steer. Well, what we had done when we went back to conventional is rather than running slick big bend assemblies, now they're stabilized low to medium bend assemblies. And that was born out of a bit of necessity that, we're having over $1 million directional bills on these, and that's not even when we'd lose them in the hole. Fortunately, this one operator, even though they twisted off like 30 or 40 rotary steerable tools, fished almost every one of them. So got really, really good at fishing RSS. That's not something you want to put on your resume. Usually we run RSS because we want to say, oh yeah, I drilled all these wells with RSS. I fished 40 of them. That doesn't play well on your resume.
I mean, whoever the fishing crew is, that they're putting some feathers in their cap.
Yeah, it's happy to see it come back to the bank for sure, but you don't want to be in that situation in the first place. What we had discovered is that when we would drill the curve, and this was, if you rewind a bit, operators started with the attitude of slick assembly. So you drill the curve slick, big bend. Then when you go to run the RSS, you have a hell of a time trying to get the RSS through this curve or any part of the lateral that you've drilled with your slick assembly, because the slick assembly is darting around and you've got a smaller diameter usable hole than the diameter of the bit. So if you imagine like stacking a bunch of washers up, they don't all line up perfectly because the bit's darting around. And so now you can't get this stiff, rigid RSS in the hole. So you're reaming the thing to bottom, you're beating it up. By the time you finally do get to bottom, it's not working for about a couple hours, and then you're tripping out of the hole and picking up another one. So to solve that problem, they had migrated to stabilized assemblies in the curve. So near bit stabilizer, top sub stabilizer, much lower bend setting, delivering consistent, reliable curves that, by the way, now you can get your RSS in the hole without having to drop bit size. So that became standard practice. Every curve, stabilized assembly, reliable build rates, life is beautiful, getting RSS in the hole, still have the problem twisting off. By the time the decision was made to get away from RSS, stabilized assemblies weren't weird anymore. Every DD out there, initially hated the idea of stabilized assemblies, but now they're like, yeah, I'm not going to drill a curve for you unless it is stabilized. It makes my job so much easier. So now we start drilling in the lateral with stabilized assemblies, and we can manipulate stabilizer placement, OD, location to get a more neutral rotary trend. And when we would get into those deflection situations, we'd find that we wouldn't get such massive dog legs when you deflect off the hard streaks. So big shout out to two companies that we had worked with, Scout and Altitude. Pat Wilson at Altitude Midland had built us some BHAs where you not only have your near bit stabilizer, but you also place the stabilizer above the bend on the lower part of the stator, and then we've got our top sub stabilizer. And by manipulating those three stabilizers, you could get the assembly to give you the rotary trend that you were looking for, and that ended up being a fantastic solution. And much more reliable than RSS. So Drill Foreman said, put up the post that conventional outdrill RSS every day. Not every day. I mean, there's some applications. If we're drilling, Maersk in Qatar drilling 40,000 feet, that a conventional assembly is not going to outdrill an RSS. But for our 2 mile laterals and less, most of the basins that I've worked in, I would agree with that comment that if you have got really good people and you've got alignment from drilling manager, superintendent, drilling engineer, DD coordinator, I mean, everybody has to be on the same page. And I think that's in line, again, with what Fred DePriest had talked about, is that you've got to get everybody understanding the same basic physics. Otherwise, it just takes one person to upset the apple cart. You could have everybody from the driller up to the drilling engineer on the same page, but then the drilling manager walks in one day, is like, what the hell are you doing running a stabilizer? Get that out of the hole. Well, then the whole idea collapses. So
yeah,
it's a lot more work just getting people on board than it is really spending time on the technical stuff.
Wow, I mean, there's so many follow-up questions I have to that, all like so many things that we brought up in there. First, I should say, Blaine Como did say the 12th is when he's doing his course. I want to say thanks to Ian McCourt for watching, and I'll make sure to say this correctly. My former boss, because he got mad at me for calling him something not former earlier. So I believe we had also Bob Godbolt said Target Directional were an outstanding group, lots of good friends there. Bob, thanks for watching. And John DeWart asked this question, so I'm gonna take one from the audience first. So it's not all about speed. Can Brandon compare wellbore quality in terms of production value? And I'll say this before I go any further. I do believe that there were, I can't remember, I think Jonathan Lightfoot had told me about, I don't know if it was an SPE paper or a study that was done that talked about how wellbore quality can actually be worse, or tortuosity can be a little bit worse with the rotary steerable because it's continually making adjustments versus with a conventional assembly that's just when you're rotating, you're not making as many adjustments with it. So I don't know if that's a SPE paper. If anybody does know, please tag it in the comments. Ian McCourt says he is no longer old. So thanks, Ian, for watching. And all the guys at Merlin, if you guys are watching Wednesday, we're going to have a class session with Neil Armstrong about drilling problems. So
I've got that on my calendar. Looking forward to that.
Oh, I am too.
He's a great guy.
So back to the question that John asked, wellbore quality as far as production value. I know this is just a hot topic for everybody, and there is no true answer, but I'll let you go ahead and try to solve this issue for us.
First, some groveling. John DeWart is a legend in the industry. I was blown away when you had him on your show, and I love that show, by the way. I don't know how you get all these guys that are like pillars of the industry to just pop on and riff with you for an hour. That's awesome. I feel like you're the Joe Rogan of oilfield podcasts.
I thank you. I appreciate that. And most of the time I just call and ask or send them direct messages, or if they put something on LinkedIn, I comment a whole bunch on it until I'm like, hey, what do you think about coming on the show?
So to answer John's question directly, I've not seen any studies that correlate, like let's say RSS versus motor production. What I can say is the commonly held belief that RSS produces lower tortuosity and better quality hull isn't always the case. I've seen several instances, and these were with early generation point-to-bit tools where some of the automation software, to get into John's realm a little bit, was doing really funky things and created a horribly tortuous spiral borehole that we could barely get out of and barely get casing into. So I am all for automation. That's definitely the direction the industry is going, but it's only as good as the people behind it that are writing the code and getting it to do the things that you want it to do. And in that particular case, because they didn't get the liner to bottom, because they had this horribly corkscrewed hole, production was not so hot. Now, that said, I know in a perfect world, you would resolve with whatever those software firmware issues are, and you'd stop having those problems. And perhaps they're easier to fine tune and scale up in an RSS application than they are in a motor app or conventional application. But I've seen cases where a low bend stabilized assembly, if you look at the cumulative tortuosity using high frequency DNI, is really not any worse than what you achieve with an RSS. So it takes a lot of effort to get there. It takes really good people and understanding of the physics and some trial and error, quite frankly, to get to the point where you're there. But I don't believe that you have to have RSS to drill a good quality straight hole. And in the ERD world, we know that that's the case because BP had broken the 10 kilometer or 33,000 foot barrier long before RSS came on the scene. So the M11 well, they're out there with motors out there at 33,000 feet. So, and they're getting casing to bottom with low levels of friction. I mean, that's all possible. And sometimes I think we forgot the good things that we learned a couple of decades ago, and we gravitate towards the new sexy, fancy stuff that maybe we don't understand as well as we think we do.
So that I should say this. So Dustin Dashel has the question: how do we define wellbore quality?
Yeah, well, there's been papers written on that, and I think it depends again on the application. to some people, if you can pull out of the hole and get casing in the bottom, they're happy. And other folks, they also want a good cement shop. Other people also want to produce a lot of oil per day.
I don't know why they would want to do that.
I mean, it's
especially right now.
When you pull on that thread, it just unravels quickly. But it takes a lot of people to chime in on what you consider to be a good quality hole. And I would say most of our unconventionals, it doesn't have to be a perfect hole. Back to the using screws or nails. If you're just building the box to put at the foot of your bed, you have to make it out of stainless steel, 3/8 diameter screws. Probably not.
So one of the questions from earlier that I wanted to be able to ask. So obviously we've been talking a little bit about RSS versus conventional for anybody that's just tuning in. And by the way, for everybody that's watching, please tag a friend so that they can come over and join the conversation as well. With the advent of RSS and where it's going, do you think that because obviously there's been a lot of money, a lot of technology being put into that. There's new rotary steerables coming on the scene all the time, falling out of the scene at the same time, then being resurrected by other companies. But do you think on the motor side, if we can get away from, I'm not going to say anything's wrong with slick assemblies, but if we can get away from slick assemblies, better stabilized assemblies, and be able to do more with the motor technology, do you think we could potentially decrease that gap between whether it's wellbore quality, cost, or even the phantom premium that an RSS has, to where somebody can go, hey, look, not only does our RSS, our conventional assembly drill as fast, gives the wellbore quality that you need, and it's only a half degree bend in the motor or something. Do you think it's possible to do that, and then that just completely negate the RSS industry as a whole?
No, I don't. RSS isn't going away. I mean, to say that you could eventually manipulate a motor to make RSS irrelevant, I don't think that's the case. As the industry pushes longer and longer laterals, you look at like what Eclipse was doing up in the Utica, 4 mile laterals, 3 and 4 mile laterals. RSS is a big advantage, right? You're starting to get to the point where it's really slow and painful to slide. Even when you're rocking, you're putting 30, 40 wraps in the string. That starts to get, impractical. So yeah, there's always going to be a place for RSS. But I do think that there's a lot of unexplored territory with motors that with pretty, inexpensive modifications, you can get them to do a lot of the things, most of the things that you want accomplished with an RSS for a fraction of the cost and much lower lost in hole exposure. Back to the Eastern Delaware, that's also a place that suffers a lot of wellbore instability challenges. And so, it would be great relief if I was the guy having to pay for lost in hole tools to know that I've got much less exposure with conventional assembly versus $1 million RSS.
Yeah, I don't think anybody likes writing those lost in hole checks.
No.
Everybody loves cashing them though.
Well, except for when all this recovers and we're back to being busy again, and manufacturing is 6 months out to build us another tool. The direction company doesn't want to lose them. They, that's lost opportunity. We want to keep the tools working. Right now, yeah, sure, let's bury them in the ground. That's money in the bank. But there will come a time where everybody wants to preserve tools.
All right, so guys, we got a question here from Armin, who should have been debating you today. Come on, Armin, you're gonna watch, but you're not gonna debate. He probably just didn't get approved from his company, which I can understand, right? Has anyone developed an RSS specific lower end to be able to turn the BHA without minimal wear and bypass? I don't know if that's a question for the audience and everybody that's watching, which thank you guys for watching, or for you, but either way, if you want to take a stab at it. And Daryl Chicken from Scout, thanks for watching. We did give you guys a shout out just a minute ago, or Brandon did.
And Scout's one of the companies that's doing really interesting things with conventional assemblies. And again, they were one of the ones that were putting stabilizers on stators long before anyone else. But lower ends, yeah, that's an interesting point. That tends to be the weak point. We've gotten power sections that are just put out a tremendous amount of torque. So whether it's snapping the transmission or breaking something else in the lower end, that is a huge area of focus, I think, or it should be more of an area of focus. We had experimented with both mud lube and sealed. I have a particular preference towards sealed bearing lower ends. And one of the reasons for that is RSS tools that require pressure drop below the motor in order to activate. So orbit, I guess, rather than dancing around it. If you're talking about orbit, not having fluid bypass through the bearings is a big advantage, because the question in your mind is, even though you've set up the restrictor, or if you're more aggressive and you've nozzled the bit correctly to create that pressure drop, what you don't know for certain is the clearance through the bearings of the motor and how the bearings wear throughout the run. So you could find yourself in a situation where on paper you're set up for optimal pad push and performance, but over the course of the run, as you start to lose more fluid through washed bearings, you've lost ability to steer. So I don't like having that as one more thing to worry about or question about or try to chase down at the end of the run to figure out why we had a non-steering issue. What is interesting about the diagnostics that you could do after the fact with Orbit is you can see on the Torquer RPMs whether or not you had some sort of an event that was causing less fluid to be going through the tool over time. So the RPMs of the Torquer will gradually decay throughout the run if you had a leak somewhere.
Yeah, so somebody just said sealed works great until it doesn't. That's from Lee Smith. So thank you guys for watching.
The same could be said about mud lube.
I think that goes for anything downhole. Everything works great until it doesn't.
Stuff's gonna break. Yeah.
MWD tools, the pumps, whatever. Eventually, something's gonna break. And just for that fact, I'll say this to everybody out there: if you ever say that your tools never break, and you say that in the sales meeting, you're lying to the drilling engineer. You should lead with saying our tools do break. We just respond faster than everybody else. So there's your new little sales tip for the day. I mean, I've been telling people that for a long time. Just be honest. There is no impervious drilling tool. MWD, drill bit, motor, nothing's impervious. It's at some point in time, something's going to fail, but it's about how you respond to that failure. If you take 3 months getting a MWD failure report back to your drilling engineer, who's getting hounded by his drilling manager about what he was going to do to fix the problem, like, you're just setting the drilling engineer up for failure. You're not helping him get promoted. And if you can do everything possible to help him get promoted, then you're doing a good job. Just my little soapbox there for a day on how to be able to treat people and treat clients. So anyways, with that said, I want to be able to talk to you a little bit more about your business and business structure. So I noticed that, like, I was looking at it the other day, as far as all the people that work for you, nobody works at a central location. You guys are spread out all over. How do you guys orchestrate being like a drilling engineering team, or the bespoke engineering group for both completions and drilling? How do you guys orchestrate all that with being so far apart from each other? Because you're up in Montana, which I think everybody can be jealous of from the drilling industry.
Well, I like to say that we've been social distancing before it was cool to be social distancing. Yeah, I live in Montana. That's where I choose to live. That's where my family's at and from. And I've got other guys that one of them works in Pennsylvania. That's where his family's from. Makes sense for him. Another one lives in West Texas. That's where he wants to be. In the modern era, there's really no reason why we have to be co-located in one place. And yeah, we use technology to our benefit to allow employees to live and work where it best suits them. A lot of times we're deploying to wherever the customer is anyway. So whether it be making a week trip to Dallas to sit in the client's office, or sitting out on the rig for 3 weeks, it doesn't really matter where your paycheck comes. It's, where the client's work is. So, we're willing to travel, and we go to where we need to be. And, we use the cloud and software and Skype and Zoom and all these awesome tools that people are getting more accustomed with these days to be able to communicate internally. So yeah, it's not too big of a leap right now with the situation we find ourselves in.
So it is possible to live somewhere beautiful and be in the oil field business.
You can do it.
Nothing against Midland. Love Midland.
Bozeman, Montana is not exactly the oil metropolis that Midland is. There's one E&P company and there's one service company. So we're the service company and we share office space with the one oil and gas company. Some guys that I went to university with, they operate massive oil and gas, and they're in Bozeman as well. But that's it. It's a real short sales call to go see them. I just walked downstairs.
I mean, I office here with a drilling engineer and petroleum engineer. So like anytime I've got questions or something, I just kind of stick my head over and like, hey, Rick, and just, ask them. So, and we're pretty much the only two here in a very liberal town outside of Austin. So I completely understand that one. I had another question. I completely forgot. So we'll just ask one of the questions from okay. I remember now. So I know that we've got a lot of the service company individuals that are watching, and anybody that is watching, please tag a friend. Let's get some more people into the conversation. Being the point that you guys are at, where you're helping out the operator, right? You're helping out the drilling engineers who are making decisions about what products and services and things like that to be able to run. How can oil field service companies help themselves as far as being able to better do sales or get their products in the hole or be able to, help their clients from your perspective? Because I'm guessing you probably see a lot of the snake oil salesmen, somebody bringing you something like, hey, we want to run this. And you're like, yeah, no, that's not a good idea. What are the things that the oil field service companies should either work on or they could do to be able to better help their clients?
I think invest in a bit of time to understand the application. If you're trying to sell a widget, for lack of a better word, understanding what is the application that you're trying to push it into. Is there a legitimate need for it? Know that the operator, probably a drilling engineer, is going to be skeptical, and they're going to have doubts about whether or not this is legitimately value added or is it just trying to sell something. So I would be prepared to be able to talk about times when your widget or product has worked and when it hasn't, and why you think that it didn't work when it didn't work, and how you can address that in your new user or a person that you're selling to's application. That lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman. And I think we need to be more open to that you've got a network of professionals out there, and your product might not always be the right thing for a certain situation.
Okay, so now the flip side of that question, do you think that the operators should be more open and transparent as far as being able to release costs, release performance data, and things of that nature to prospective oil field service companies, so that if they come in to be able to make claims, that they have something to be able to make those claims against?
Without a doubt, I think one of the greatest weaknesses is operators' unwillingness to share EDR data. So TOTCO, Pason, whatever system it is that is on your rig, because we've all got them, that has to be more open and transparent than what it is right now. I can't imagine trying to sell a drill bit or explain why a bit succeeded or didn't succeed without having access to the run EDR data. And so often that stuff is tight hold, or, we throw up these false flags that it's, proprietary or some competitive advantage. And it's just not. I mean, if you want to do better and you want your service providers to be able to deliver better products and services, you got to be transparent with that high frequency drilling data that we've all got. I think that's the single biggest bottleneck. And if I could snap my fingers today in the industry, that would go away. And anybody that was an approved vendor for a particular application would be able to get the data they need.
I mean, I would love to be able to see it to where, if they had, the drilling engineers selected, 4 or 5 different directional companies. Let's say that they're using 2 on the rig and they've got, 3 sitting on the bench, that all 3 of them have access to the data, be able to look over the data and be able to see, like, at any point in time, be like, they can come back and say, hey, look, we see what's going on here. We think that we can do better. And here's the spots where we think we could do better with our applications. So then it's like everybody's in the group together. And as well, if you are the service company that's performing, you have other competitors watching you perform. I think there's been plenty of studies done to where, like, if you take a sprinter and you have them sprint 100 meters, and then you take that same athlete, give them the rest they deserve, and then put them next to somebody else and have them run again, they run a faster time.
Yeah.
And I think if we could do that same thing with the open and transparency, to be able to say, look, not only do you need to outperform what you did on the last well, but you got other people that are chomping at the bit that are getting to watch you perform from the bench that want to be able to take this spot, just to be able to breed some of the competition. So I'm a big believer. I'll ask this out to everybody in the audience. What do you guys think as far as open and sharing data? What could we do to be able to get the operators more on board with being able to do that? We did have another question that came in here. Let me see if I can scroll up real quick to be able to see who it was that asked it. So Sergey Porshin, he's a RTOC specialist at Weatherford. Where do you guys stand on full remote operations, not only MWD, LWD, but DD as well? I know they're not asking me the question because I'm not the expert. So
I bet you have an opinion.
I have an opinion on everything, but they're all wrong. I learned a long time ago not to put my opinion out there on LinkedIn or really even on my show. I might talk about some things every once in a while, but it goes so much better when I just ask other people questions.
There you go. I think remote ops, that's definitely the direction that things are going. And I think more and more we'll be able to move a lot of that support away from the rig. That said, if it was me, if I was a drilling engineer and I had a critical well, I really like the comfort blanket of knowing that I've got a really good crew on location. Now, does that make sense when you've got, when we get back to 1,000 rigs running in the U.S., if that day ever comes, that's going to be hard to do because we just, quite frankly, won't have the people to have our superstars on every rig. So I do like the concept of being able to put the talent in a centralized location and ship it to the places that it needs to go nearly instantaneously remotely. So I think there'll be more of that. Maybe only the really high profile wells will be the ones where we've got the rock stars on location.
All right. Thank you on that one. So, hey, guys, everybody that's out there watching, we've gotten already a handful of people that are saying yes. Please open up the data. Stop tight holding information. EDR is essential. Yes, data needs to be shared. So I think that everybody's in agreement with this. So if we have any operators that are watching that are willing to be able to put their name in the comment section, please let us know what we need to be able to do to ask you guys to be able to open that up even more. So then you did mention there, as far as the growth of the industry going back to 1,000 rigs, what do you see as far as the future of the industry? Do you think that we're going to get back to a level where we have, let's say the over under is 500? What do you think is the future as far as rig count?
Boy, if I knew that, I wouldn't do what I do. Yeah. I don't know. Pass. I think you got to know when you're out of your depth. I just work here.
As long as there's rigs running, we'll stay involved. Yeah. All right. So another question: what do you think are some of the big issues that drilling engineers are facing right now that either oilfield service companies or drilling engineers could do to be able to start to be able to solve whatever those things are?
Yeah. I hope that the audience doesn't take this the wrong way, but there is a lack of technical competence. So I would say take this opportunity during the downturn when things are slower to learn about what's out there. Learn about the physics of what's happening downhole. There's not a good understanding of wellbore instability and geomechanics. There's lots of courses out there. A lot of them are free. Mark Zobak's course, if any of you are interested, from Stanford University, puts on a great, and it counts for college credit. Learn about what's really going on with hole cleaning. Learn about what's really going on with bit mechanics. Fred DePriest course that you did last week, 2 weeks ago?
Something like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of resources out there, and I really think drilling engineers need to get more on board with the real physics of what's going on rather than some of the hog laws and mysticism that's been floating around in the industry. And if we can get the whole industry a little bit higher level technically, then when we come out of all this, we'll be doing a lot better.
What would you give as far as advice for a lot of the guys? So like, I know that we've got a handful of people that are watching now. I'm not going to call out anybody in particular, but we've got some guys that have got, 20 plus years experience in the industry, very technically sound, that have been let go from some of their companies. What would you say to them and what they should do to be able to continue adding value to the industry? Obviously, their company saw it as far as a financial decision, most likely to be able to let them go, but obviously they still have value that they can bring. What are some of the things that you would say that they should do to be able to help utilize that value and bring it back to the industry?
Start a company. It cost about $1,500, I think, to register with the state, and you're off to the races. And get used to hearing the word no. Not everybody's looking for additional help, but yeah, if you're a 20-year hand and you've had great experiences and some stuff, and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty, I would incorporate and start knocking on doors, and don't get discouraged if people say no, because there's a need out there. As long as there's rigs running, there's going to be a need for technical support, and you have value and you can help people. And I know that's a lot easier to say than it is to do, but that's the situation we find ourselves in.
I can count just in my head right now, based off of the comments and the people watching, there's at least 15 people who have said no to Gibson Reports that are watching right now. Yeah. So I still survive. We're still going. So yes, I think that's, phenomenal advice. Start your company, just start knocking on doors. It'll take a little while to fill the pipeline, but things will start popping out the other end. And then once you do it, it won't be about the money. You will quickly discover you can make, I think for me, I can make 25% the money that I used to make, but I am 10 times happier with lifestyle and the way things go, and being able to kind of do things like this. I never would have had this opportunity before when I was working for somebody else. They never would have allowed this. So,
well, and look at how many lives you're touching every week when you do these shows. There's not just in the comments that you can see. I'm sure there's gratification in that, but there's people that don't comment. I've watched several of your shows, and I don't comment or let you know that I'm watching, but it's had an impact on me. And I know, but I think that's more the norm. A lot of people don't want to raise the flag in the air and poke their head above water. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is great, and we need more of that kind of stuff right now.
So we definitely need to be able to get some more of you guys that are out there. Oh, and thanks, Ian McCourt. If anybody's looking in the comment section, Ian McCourt just posted the link to the Stanford Geomechanics course. It is a free course. I have signed up for it before, planned on attending, and then the show actually started. Like, I got the permission to be able to start doing the show. So that kind of fell on the back burner, and I've been crazy busy with the show right now. So I don't know when I'll be able to do it, but if any of you guys are looking, it's in the comments section right now, just above Zach Powers' comment. Christian Thomas is watching. Christian Thomas is a senior at the University of Texas, went up there and spoke to the AADE group. It says, in today's market, it seems like banks are a lot less likely to give out capital. Is it still worth the risk of starting your own business?
Yeah. So, some businesses have a high startup cost. Others don't. I feel fortunate when we started TD Unlimited, it didn't have a very high startup cost. We didn't have brick and mortar office. Laptops are fairly inexpensive. You can get off the ground without a whole lot of money saved up. You're probably going to spend more time on going out and selling your service, knocking on doors, getting used to hearing no for a while. But yeah, originally when I started down this road, I thought, oh man, I got to have somebody give me $1 million in order to get off the ground. And that's just not really the case. If you sit down and scratch it out, it doesn't take that much money to get a company started.
I will say this, John DeWort just posted Drilling Systems Automation, no cost industry information, the DSA roadmap.org and the DSABOK.org, Book of Knowledge. So if anybody else, you just heard it from Brandon a minute ago, how highly he thinks of John DeWort. And so those are two different things that John DeWort has done for the industry. So be sure to go and check those out. I would also recommend checking out anytime the SPs does the DSAS group, Drilling Systems and Automation Technical section, which actually I'm a subcommittee chairperson for the Open API software, and I have a little bit of work to do on that one. So but those are other sources, other groups of information that take place about some of the drilling stuff. with that, Brandon, what do you think are some of the other things that that are out there that people could attach themselves with to be able to help educate themselves? What are some of the things that you fall back on, or places that you go to find new information?
Yeah, I think that the LinkedIn community is a great place to go find people out there that are willing to share. And you can spend an hour combing through that and come up with 5 great things that you could dedicate your time over the course of the week to learn more about. One of the things that I'm doing personally, if you've ever checked out the site Udemy, they have some relatively inexpensive online courses around software. So I'm kind of late to the party, but trying to get on the bandwagon on data analytics. So I'm taking a Python course with my oldest son. Really interesting. It's easy to follow. You can work at your own pace. That's another one of those areas that is the future in the industry. And I don't think that it's going to hurt anyone to get more up to speed, both on coding and analytics and how you can manipulate tools to give you the knowledge that you need.
I highly recommend any of the data visualization softwares. The one I mainly use, Tableau, Power BI, Domo, CSense, any one of those, Spotfire. If you can, go learn those. It's absolutely phenomenal. The amount of money I've made off of just doing simple reports for operators with those is unreal. I know that there's other people out there with better connections that I have that could definitely do wondrous things. All right, guys. So if you guys got any more questions, be sure to throw them there into the comment section. Tag anybody else that you think should be watching this today. I want to be able to go back a little bit more to the RSS versus conventional. What do you think that the conventional or the RSS market needs to be able to address to be able to start gaining even more market share, especially given the current climate of the industry?
Reliability, particularly in the slim hole application. So, again, back to this is isolated but recent experience. Eastern Delaware 6 3/4 hole, 4 3/4, and then eventually 5-inch diameter tools just didn't have the reliability that their 6 3/4 inch big brothers had. When we drill on the same lease, an 8.5-inch hole and 6 3/4 inch tools versus 6 3/4 inch hole and 5-inch tools, reliability wasn't there. That was a big bottleneck. Not only are they higher day rate, but if it's taking more BHAs to get to TD, then your value proposition disappears. I don't think that there's more to be gained in terms of hole quality. Again, on the same pad where you drill a well with RSS and a well with conventional, you'd have the same friction factors running casing and pulling the drill string out of the hole with the properly set up, stabilized low bend motor that you did with the RSS. So if your hole quality is your angle, I don't know that there's much more to be gained there. I think for the volume market, it's going to be reliability. It's a statistics game, and you're going to have to show that you're consistently not breaking and bending under the downhole condition.
So on reliability, I think that's a great topic. I know that I talked to Fred about this one kind of off camera, and sorry for everybody. I hate to tell you this, but like after I get done with these shows, sometimes I sit around with Fred for like an hour and we just BS, and that doesn't get recorded or put out here. So one of the things we had talked about is that reliability can stem from drilling practices. So you can make bigger, beefier tools. You can do things that eliminate basic failures, but some parts of your reliability comes down to drilling practices. What's the best way for like an oil field service company or a RSS provider to be able to approach a drilling engineer and say, hey, look, I think that these drilling practices are what's killing my tools? Because I think Fred's even done it in presentations. He says, if you're drilling to be able to prevent tool failure, you're going to cause tool failures.
Yep.
As opposed to if you're drilling the fastest, best well you can, you're going to eliminate tool failures. Obviously, I know he talks a lot about like bit whirl and whirl in general, and how those things cause reliability. How would you say, being the guy that talks to drilling engineers and is kind of almost like an advisor to so many of them, for those service companies to be able to approach the drilling engineers about the drilling practices?
Yeah. If I was a directional company and I wanted to impress my prospective client, I'd get Node up on MSE, whirl, vibrations, spitballing, do Fred's class. You can distance education, Fred's class at A&M. There's plenty of stuff that's recorded and out there in public domain. The application, again, back to Eastern Delaware, Whirl, absolutely what was destroying the tools. It's also one of the things that got people interested in going RSS in the first place. And let me back up a minute. There was a common observation that you'd be drilling fast, no problems. In rotary mode, you put in a slide in a limestone, and then after the slide, all hell breaks loose. Your ROP is falling apart. You're either chunking the motor or you just DBR a bit. So you pull out the hole, the shoulders run out. That's Whirl. Whirl was happening because you had very little effective weight transfer, low depth of cut, and during the slide, the bits rattling around, destroying the cutters, right? Enter the scene RSS. Okay, RSS should solve that problem now because I can always have good transmission of weight on bit. I'm not sliding. This whole problem that I was introducing by having a conventional assembly in the hole disappears. Fantastic. Except now I've got a DD or directional company out there that is so hyper focused on adhering to the trajectory that they only ever downlink off bottom. Or when they do downlink on bottom, they're control drilling at 20 foot an hour. Well, now what you've done, all the good you've done by getting away from sliding and low weight transfer is created an even worse problem where you've got, again, low depth of cut, an opportunity for Whirl. The bit's turning even faster than it was in the conventional assembly if you're running a powered RSS, which is now even more death and destruction for the bit and or all these heavy components that are hanging below your motor. So that was one of the experiences with the operator that I mentioned before is we had to basically take over from the directional company in terms of what their practices were for downlinking. We're not going to off-bottom downlink. It's unacceptable. When you're doing an on-bottom downlink, unless you're about to drill off lease, we don't need to be control drilling at 20 foot an hour. We don't have to have these random and arbitrary values that we set our ROP to when we downlink. We need to choose parameters that still deliver low MSE and low vibration, low dysfunction while we're doing our downlink sequence. The analogy I would make back to the 10-year-olds building boxes, here we are at the Cub Scout meeting, and I've got three boys, a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Well, the 5-year-old thinks what the 10-year-old's doing is great, and so he grabs one of the hammers, is run around the church basement just beating up everything, right? Well, that's kind of what we've got with the RSS and the DDs out there off bottom downlinking. You've got a 5-year-old swinging a 5-pound sledge around, destroying the church basement.
Hold on, I got a minute or hour 6. Okay, I'm gonna notate that, and we'll make that a short clip. And
oh no, I'm gonna get hate mail.
But they've got to watch the whole show to be able to understand the
context.
Do you think that more of the directional drilling companies need to be able to verify the level of education as far as working with the different systems? So like I know that like when I was at Schlumberger many moons ago, like we had RSS guys and then we had conventional guys. And if we had a problem out on the offshore rig and then all of a sudden we had to fly a motor out there, whatever we got it out there, we had to have a conventional DD come out there as well. Do you think we're getting to that point to where we've got DDs that are going to be focused in on specific areas and with specific tools?
Possibly even down to configuration. So one of the better DDs that I've worked with in recent history was not even aware that Orbit could be run without a motor. We were talking about, why don't we drop the motor and just run Orbit, so we can slow the bit down, mitigate Whirl. He's like, well, you can't do that. Why can't you do that? I mean, that was the way it worked for the first decade, right? It wasn't until, a couple of directional sales guys had a few too many cocktails. They're like, what we could do is we could sell a motor and an RSS. That would be the cat's pajamas. But then, you got this whole generation of DDs that are of the misconception that you can't run Orbit without a motor. What? So yeah, I guess to answer your question, you probably, as the tools become more specific, you're probably going to have people that are qualified for that particular setup. Back to your question about general education, I would love to see something like Fred's general philosophy or course, or some agreed upon this is modern drilling. That start to become more standardized. It doesn't necessarily need to be delivered by Fred or Merlin or K&M or me or whoever, but some sort
IDD,
of, whoever, some
wink,
neutral
wink,
third
blank.
party. A curriculum where a bit like well control school, where there's a certain minimum standard that everybody needs to have been exposed to, so that we can do away with practices that are 50 years old that we can't even remember where they came from. This whole breaking in bits and fanning bottom and general nonsense, that we got to get rid of a lot of that before we can really start to move into the more sophisticated future of automation.
And so one of the things that I found real interesting in recent passes, so Matt Isbell with their remote ops center, is that they had found that their directional drillers have become very high level directional drillers per se in a very specific region. Now, obviously, those guys are kind of working in-house for them. With more operators, like you mentioned, having to bring and vertically integrate the directional drillers, do you see that happening more and more? Because obviously you've got exposure to the operators in a way that probably service companies and myself don't see. Do you see them more leaning that direction to where they're going to start vertically integrating and then getting DDs that are good just on their acreage? Because if that's the case, then it really doesn't matter how you drill anywhere else, as long as you drill good where you're supposed to drill.
I think we're going to see more of that. And it's not new. 20 years ago when I worked at ExxonMobil had a famous project offshore California, the SYU San Maez unit, and their ERD wells out there, they always had Scooter and Bubba. Literally, that was their name. Scooter and Bubba were the DDs. They drilled all the wells, and it didn't matter whose tools went in the ground. It was going to be Scooter and Bubba calling the shots, whether we're sliding or down Lincoln or whatever, right? And so they had the local knowledge, and Exxon had the trust in them to deliver the wells. Fast forward to 2020 now, we've got operators that have DDs that have worked for them for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they really know the basin and the area and the BHAs that have been run, and there's tremendous value in that. I think more value in that, human knowledge than there is in any particular downhole tool. The problem with it, though, is as soon as the market shifts and you move from one basin to another, the local knowledge that you develop and evolve in the Bakken, let's say, doesn't necessarily translate one for one when scoop and stack becomes hot again, right? So that there's a little bit of exposure for the DD that wants to be the premier all-star in Reeves County. As soon as we're not drilling in Reeves County, what do you put on your resume? I don't know.
You start a LinkedIn profile and you start interviewing people when your value drops for doing anything in the field.
You start driving into Pecos County and having lunch at the cafe and trying to get some Pecos knowledge.
All right, guys. So we've got Lee Lohofer. Lohofer. Sorry, Lee, for butchering your last name there. Actually, I know I have sent Lee a couple of messages asking him to come on the show because he's a former drilling mentor. It says, "Hey, Brandon Foster, a long time since we talked. As former operators here, my perspective on remote ops, it's a viable option, but will take time. We still need rock stars at the rig." Well, everybody's making comments, so it's kind of moving up. I'll have to go back and read that one later. It's too long to... But Lee, thanks for watching the show. I would love to have you on the show, sir. So
you'd be a great one.
If you're still watching, and anybody else that's watching, please tag Lee or reply to his comment and tell him to come on so that we can do some high school level peer pressure to be able to get him to come on to the Vitor Locksmith show. Armin says DDs need to know the physics of drilling to ensure value added with any tools.
No doubt.
And I'm not seeing. Oh, whoa! I've just clicked something out. Okay, I just completely messed up all of that stuff on there. Never mind. Sorry, it's kind of difficult sometimes having to look at somebody, look at the camera, read comments. It's a tough life, you guys. All right, Brandon, we are. We've already gone like an hour and 15. I hope I'm not keeping you from the kids or building any more boxes and stuff with the kids there. Thank you guys so much out there for watching. Oh, Peter Aird is now watching. Agreed. Homogeneous, heterogeneous formations is not exactly that challenging. Peter, thanks so much for watching. We are going to try to get a episode with Peter here in the future. to be able to have him do a classroom session, kind of like what we've got with Merlin coming up. I should tell everybody that is watching, on Monday, we're going to have Jamie Beard, who is a geothermal expert, be able to come on and talk about some of the geothermal stuff, as well as a new competition with lots and lots of prize money that was recently released by the Department of Energy, I think. We'll let her spill the beans on that one. Then after that, hopefully, we're getting it set up right now. Clint Leeser with Intrepid is going to come on and talk about their purchase of the Gyrodata directional drilling division. On Tuesday, I'll be on live with the Pink Petro Group. Wednesday, we've got Neil Armstrong with Merlin. Thursday, we will have George King doing his presentation through SPE Live. So it'll be continuous days, and I don't have anybody for Friday lined up yet, but we will have somebody lined up. I will be going live every day next week. So Brandon, here towards the end of the show, we don't have any more questions from anybody else. I've asked pretty much all my questions, even though I can still talk to you for hours. Anything else that you would like to be able to share, put out there for everybody that's watching, any message that you want to end the show with?
I would just, offer some words of encouragement and optimism for those of you that have lost your job or you anticipate that you may in the future. We'll come out of this. This is not the first time, and it won't be the last time that the industry goes through something like this. So hold your head up high. You have value. You can still add value, and we'll get through this. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you so much for joining the show. I should say, James Butler just said, thanks for the show. Wish I had made it when you guys started. Rewatch the first half hour. Yes, excuse me, guys. Anytime that you guys want to, you can go back and watch these full episodes later on. I need to get back on there and put an article back on my page to where you can go and see the links of all the shows we've done. I think this is like show number 51, 52, somewhere in there. We've done a whole bunch here recently that I haven't recorded or put on there. We've got people asking to be able to talk about casing design. I know nothing about that, so that would be an amazing thing to be able to do. Thanks, Brandon. I liked the line. I can't imagine trying to sell a drill bit without EDR data. I can't imagine having to sell anything other than what I sell, because I'm not good at selling. Even though somebody had said something about a sales class. I think that was Nick Williams with Liam, so obviously he's out of his mind. The other thing I will add, just to be on what you just said a minute ago, yes, guys, please keep your head up, and if anything that we can learn from this downturn is please live a very humble lifestyle. Please do not compare yourself to anybody else. I will say this again and again, and I'll probably be doing a cribs and cars episode here pretty soon, just to be able to show you guys. My car that I drive is 3 different colors. I have to roll my window down to be able to reach my hand out to be able to get out of my car. It's actually not even my car. It's my brother's car, who's the one that owns it. I live in a 900 square foot duplex. I have reduced my personal overhead as much as possible, and it's given me the opportunity to not have to stress. And I'm not trying to boast myself right now. I'm just trying to say it's okay to live a very humble lifestyle. I know a lot of us get caught up in the oil and gas business and all the money and the flair that goes on. Please do not compare yourself to the directional driller that's driving a jacked up truck onto location. You can live a meager lifestyle and not have to worry about anything else other than what's happening in your own household. So please, 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 guys, don't put yourself in a position where you're over leveraged and you're having to sweat right now. So that's my only thing. I wish more people would do that. So, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Guys, be sure to go to the TD Unlimited website. They've got classes coming up. Please connect with Brandon. Send him a whole bunch of connection requests. He will say yes to all of them and answer any questions you guys have and give you free drilling engineer help. Sign you up for a whole bunch of stuff here, Brendan. As well as we also have the ERD database that's on the IADD website. The write-up about it was actually done by Brandon. The terms wrapped versus unwrapped is all on there as well. That was written up by Brandon because I'm not knowledgeable in that area. So there's a lot of things that Brandon, not only doing this, but there's a lot of other areas that he's helped out with the industry. And so it'd be great for you guys to be able to show appreciation and feedback to him for having done these things. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. Look forward to being able to hopefully do this again sometime in the future. Maybe we'll get one of your completions guys to come on and and school us up on that side. For everybody else out that's watching, remember Blaine Como, May 12th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on his Rotary Steerable course, since he just posted that. Tunde, Oliver, Ricardo, everybody else that's watching, thank you guys so much. And as always, guys, know your industry.